Okay, so once you have finished your drawing, you're going to draw it out on the paper and then use a Sharpie to go through, and you're going to define what the positive shapes are going to be. Notice that all the shapes need to be closed forms, not open. And so I'm going in with the Sharpie and just filling those in. And so these are going to be the areas in my print that are going to be the positive space, the areas that I'm filling in with the Sharpie. This is the areas where the ink will go when I roll the ink onto the plate. Now, once I finish filling that in with Sharpie, again, remember closed forms for this, and you'll see why in a second. Now I need to transfer my image onto the linoleum plate. So we're using this, it's a type of linoleum. It's a bit softer than the hard linoleum, like the tiles in your kitchen floor. A lot of those were made with a different type of linoleum, but this one is a lot easier to cut into. And so now I need to transfer the image onto the plate. Remember that this year's theme is things in nature for this year's theme. And so to transfer my drawing, this is one way to do it. Remember that your drawing, once you print it, it's going to be reverse. It's going to be backwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an ebony pencil, these ebony pencils, and I'm going to put pencil over the entire back of the paper, covering the whole back area here. This. Okay. Now I'm going to take my drawing, once I have the back of it completely covered with the ebony pencil, take my linoleum plate here. I'm going to put my drawing onto the linoleum, and I'm going to take just a couple pieces of this paper tape like this and put the paper tape on each side. This way my drawing doesn't move around while I'm transferring it. And your drawing will probably wrap around the edge of the plate. And tape that on. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, you can either use a different color pen or a color pencil. A color pencil also works really good with this. It's just so that you can see the lines, because if I were to use a pencil or the Sharpie again, I can't see what areas I've already gone over as I'm tracing it. So I'm just going around and tracing over the image. And since it's in a different color with the color pencil, I can see what areas I've already done. So if I stop and then come back, then I know where to continue. So I'm just tracing around all of those closed forms, and we're closed forms. And it's also going to help as you go along and trace this, is to sort of shade in those closed forms. And this will remind me, once I get to the point where I'm cutting into the plate, it will remind me what areas not to cut. So I'm going to cut around those forms. So you can see I'm just shading in. And with the color pencil, it's easy to see what areas I've already done. All the way down here. filling those in. So this is why it's important to do a few preliminary sketches to figure out, because remember, once you make these cuts into the plate, that's it. You only get one go. So it's kind of good to map this out beforehand so you know what to cut, what not to cut, and kind of how your image is going to turn out once it's completed. So I'm going to do the center flower here. And then I'm going to lift this up so you can see how it transfers. And again, I'm going to go through and complete that, but you can see that it transfers the image onto the linoleum plate. And I can use just a regular pencil, or you could use the ebony pencil, either one, and just sort of go over some of those lines. Because it might be very light when you transfer it, so you want to make sure that you can see the image. So I'm just going back over it, and I can make out where those positive shapes and negative shapes are. And then when you are ready, you're going to be using the, this is called a gouge. And what we do is we actually sort of, it's almost like a spoon. You're sort of spooning out the areas that will be the negative space, all right? So anything that you don't want seeing, that's the negative space. And so I'm going to use a number 2. Each one of these blades, please don't change out the blades. If you need to change out a blade, come and see me so that I can help you with it, because these pieces get lost very easily. So I'm going to use a number 2. It's kind of a medium-sized blade for this. And I'm going to cut into the plate. What you're going to do is cut the image into the plate. These are about, I don't know, a 1/4 inch thick. So if you don't cut too deep into the plate, you can actually do 2 images. You could have an image on either side. So try not to cut too deep. So as I cut into here, you just press into the linoleum. You'll see that it cuts quite easily. And again, just the depth of the gouge itself, that's probably the depth that you'll want to go. Don't go any deeper into the plate. Otherwise, you'll only be able to have one image on one side because it'll become too fragile. So I just start cutting out those negative spaces. So the areas that I did not shade are the negative space. And I just go, and again, I'm pressing into like this, pressing into it, and then sort of variation of pressure, right? Vary the pressure to get thinner lines or thicker lines with the gouge. And I'm just going to start cutting out all that, the negative space. Okay. And so in the next video, once I have my plate completely cut out, I'll show you how to roll on the ink and then start making your first prints.